Right, hopefully you can see my lovely whiteboard properly. What I'm going to do is draw out the crossover used in the Mark 1 Ditton 44, and then I'm going to draw out the crossover used in the Spindle BC1, and then talk about how I'm going to integrate these and how I think it's probably going to work. Obviously I will need to be doing quite a bit of measuring and tweaking a few component values around, especially where the mid-range meets the HF1300. I think that's going to be the part that I will need to work on the most, but largely I want to keep the woofer circuit, the HF1300 and Cole's super tweeter circuit as they were, and play with the mid to integrate that. Right, so the Ditton 44. I've done so many of these, I kind of know them off by heart. Right, so let's start at this end with the tweeter first. Our HF2000. So we have a 4 microfarad. This is normally made up of a cluster of two 2 microfarads, and then we have a 6 microfarad, normally made up of 3 2 microfarad caps. Then we come into our HF2000, which is connected out of phase. And then in between here we have an inductor down to ground, which is 0.11 millihenry. So that's our third order tweeter circuit. Our mid-range, we come from positive into a 24 microfarad capacitor. On the Mark II, that's a 30. The enclosure volume for the mid-range on the Mark II is slightly bigger, so the mid-range plays down a little bit lower, and I think the burst inductor value on the woofer circuit is a little bit different as well. So the crossover point is kind of pushed down a little bit. Yeah, some people prefer the Mark 1 to the Mark II. I do personally, because the mid is used more as a mid. But anyway, there we go. Right, so we've got a 24 microfarad cap, and then we have an inductor down to ground, which is 2.25, yeah, 2.25 millihenry, so quite a big value. And then we come through an inductor. So this second order section here dictates the roll off to the woofer. This next part dictates the roll off into the tweeter. So we've got a 0.66, I think it is, yep, or 65 millihenry inductor, and then we have a 6 microfarad capacitor down to ground, and then we have our mid-range, which is connected in phase. So I'm pretty certain it's this section of the circuit here that I will need to adjust to make it work with the BC1, the HF1300 I should say. And then on our woofer circuit, fourth order on this, so we've got an inductor, and then we hit our woofer, and we've got a cap rounding out this inductor, and a cap grounding out this inductor. This is 3.4. These are all measured values, by the way. This inductor is 2.25, same as that one, and our two capacitors are both 72 microfarad. Really windy outside. So that's our Ditton 44 Mark 1 crossover. So fourth order on our woofer, second order high and low pass band pass on our mid-range, third order on our tweeter. Right, I've just adjusted the camera slightly because my light, which is above your head, was casting a line across here. Okay, so let's have a look at the BC1 crossover. So we're retaining the woofer and the mid-range on our Ditton 44. We're changing the high frequency part. So what I'm going to do is rub this out at the moment. Carry this along a bit because it's going to get a bit more busy. So we'll call this section here the Ditton 44, and this section here will be the Spender BC1 high frequency circuit. Right, so on the BC1 we have the HF1300 and the Coles Super Tweeter. So if we start with the Coles Super Tweeter, a third order arrangement, so we've got a 1 microfarad cap with an inductor down to ground, teeny value, 0.09 millihenry. Another 1 microfarad cap, and then our Coles Super Tweeter connected in phase, Super HF. And then what we also have is a 33 ohm resistor bridging that inductor. So that's the Super Tweeter circuit. For the HF1300 we come in through a 1.5 microfarad capacitor. We come through an inductor next, which is 0.2 millihenry. Then we come into a 3 microfarad capacitor. This is made up of a 1 and a 2 microfarad. And then we have an inductor down to ground, which is 0.3 millihenry. And then we carry on to our HF1300, which is connected out of phase. And I need some better pens. So basically I want to keep these two circuits as they are because the integration between the Super Tweeter and HF1300 is fantastic. Man, it's windy out there. So we have a third order arrangement on our HF1300. We have an inductor also that limits how high the HF1300 plays. I've said in many videos before that it has a natural roll off at 13 kilohertz. I mean it's a really steep off a cliff, but there's probably some breakup up there, so it's being rolled off earlier than that. I think it's about 9 or 10 kilohertz. So assuming I'm going to keep that exactly the same as it is, and I'm going to keep the woofer circuit exactly the same as it is. I'm going to keep because I'm keeping this the same, I'm going to keep the section of the mid-range, which is the 24 microfarad cap and the 2.25 millihenry inductor, this section the same, because this is integrated nicely with our woofer. What I'm going to have to play with is this section here, which limits how high the mid-range plays. Currently the crossover point between the mid and the HF2000 is around 4.5–5,000 hertz. So 4.5 kilohertz to 5 kilohertz, sorry. In the Spendle BC1 that's nearer 3 kilohertz, so that's probably where these values will need to change to roll the mid correctly into the HF1300, and then this part should be okay. Whether this will still stay as a second order or whether it will become a third order like it is in the BC1, I don't know yet. That will happen when we do the measurements and bits and pieces, but yeah, basically that's what I'm shooting for, with modifications to this section. So we'll see what happens. Right, so here's a look at the Ditton 44 crossover. Our 2 inductors and 2 capacitors on our woofer circuit. Our mid-range circuit. So we have the low pass and high pass parts of the mid on this, and then our third order tweeter circuit. I'm hoping I can fit everything on this board. We're really gaining another third order part for the super tweeter. I could kind of use this layout as it is, and then do a separate board for the super tweeter, but I'd rather keep it all on this. So really I'm going to strip all this off, scrunch up the woofer circuit a little bit more, probably the same with the mid-range, although I'm going to be working on this section here, and then with the HF1300 that can become this section here, and hopefully I'll have room down the bottom for the super tweeter part. So I think I'm going to look at doing that now, and then yeah, going from there really. So I've stripped off one of these boards. I've kept the tags on here at the moment because they may prove useful if I have a good think about how I'm going to arrange things on here. I might still be able to make use of those to help me out a bit. Ultimately everything's going to be point-to-point connected, so no circuit traces or anything like that to cause us any aggro. I've just been going through one of my plastic drawers of inductors from Celestion speakers that I've stripped out over the years, and I have a number of air core inductors which are very similar to the values that I'm going to need to add in the HF1300 and our Cole super tweeter. So that is good, and their DC resistance value or values are very similar as well, because that's obviously quite an important thing too. So yeah, I can make use of that, and really the more I can keep this speaker Celestion, that's got to be a good thing really. So yeah, right, so this is the crossover board cobbled together at the moment for these Ditton 44 XRs, as I'm calling them. This is going to change, I'm sure, but for the time being this gets me going, and hopefully is about there, apart from the part of the mid circuit we need to work on. So the woofer circuit, have a positive here through this inductor with this capacitor down to ground. We carry on through this inductor out to our woofer with this capacitor down to ground. So that's our 4th order woofer circuit. And then on the super tweeter, I very much doubt I need to attenuate this, so I've picked up the positive here in through our 1 microfarad capacitor with our inductor down to ground. That wire goes underneath, and then through this 1 microfarad out to our super tweeter. And we're bridging this with a I've got a 32 there at the moment, 32 ohm. Originally it was 33, but that's what I've cobbled together at the moment. I've got a grounding point there. The HF 1300 circuit is here, so we'll come in positive in here. The reason I've left this like it is in case I need to add a resistor in here. I've got room. So yeah, we come through our 1.5, then we go through a 0.2 millihenry inductor, carrying on to this capacitor 3 and out to our HF 1300, and then we've got this inductor here in between, creating our 3rd order, and this lead here goes up to our negative. And then here is our first part of our mid-range circuit, so the high pass part. So we come in here, this will be the positive in, through this capacitor with this inductor down to ground, and then we'll carry on here to the other part of the mid circuit that I need to work on. So I've left myself space here to clip together bits and pieces. There'll be an inductor and a capacitor in here somewhere. So yeah, hopefully this is the only part of the crossover I need to change. That's the plan. But yeah, there we go. It's not the prettiest thing in the world at the moment, and I've just used components that I've got. All these caps are new, but chances are I'll probably put something a bit better on the tweeter circuit. But yeah, right, so next part will be measuring and crossover work. Catch you soon.